It's the Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling Podcast. My name is Josh, and joining me today via pre-recording, deep in an underground bunker in parts unknown, we will hear from Josh. Let's jump right in. Money in the Bank coming up. A new direction going for Money in the Bank, definitely with the corporate ladder match. Participants will apparently start on the first floor of the WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, and apparently somehow battle their way up each floor until reaching the roof of the building itself, wherein via leaked photos we found out that there is a ring there with the ladders, with the briefcases hanging overhead. So, I mean, at its face, on paper, I don't know exactly what to expect. They haven't been very specific about what battling to the top means. Is this going to be some kind of like World War III multi-cage level thing? I don't know. I don't know. It sounds interesting on paper. I feel like this is another example of WWE really making wrestling lemonade out of these wrestling lemons, doing something totally different. Fun bit of trivia about WWE's headquarters roof. Apparently the roof was used when they were filming parts of the original Raw intro for WWF Raw's War back in the day. So this looks like WWE's headquarters roof is no stranger. So we'll have to see how that works out. I mean, it could be like a real flop, the Kennel of Hell match. Like the Kennel of Hell match sounded good on paper, but then when you actually watch the damn thing, it's not very good. I'm going to guess that the Money in the Bank corporate ladder deal is going to be better than the Kennel from Hell match. I mean, unless, Aleister Black, starts humping people or takes a shit on the floor, I think we could safely say that it's going to be something very interesting and worth watching. So I got to give WWE credit on being creative, at least with that. Let's hear from Josh, see what he thinks.
All right, so we got our outlook for the Money in the Bank. Climbing the corporate ladder, I think, is an interesting idea. Certainly given the circumstances too, right? Like the Performance Center. I don't know that you could have the big ladder, so to speak, those big spots in the Performance Center, which is why I think they obviously decided on the headquarters. But anyway, this is a great idea. And I think, again, it's going to be pre-recorded. And there's a lot of different ways they can go about this, especially considering they're going 4 floors. So they could really set up, it could really be a great, as far as setup to several high-flying spots. It's going to basically be a spot fest, I think. But I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. Now, here is the thing. I have uninstalled my WWE subscription, and I stand to that. And again, my decisions are my own. I'm not telling anyone, as far as our subscribers listening to this show, necessarily to unsubscribe to the WWE Network. But that said, I've been looking at a lot of things that, the way WWE has been handled and handling things, and it sort of goes against my way of thinking, so to speak. So again, I'm not coming from any place of judgment. I'm very moderate when it comes to this. I am excited to see how it plays out. I am still an investigative podcast journalist, so I'm certainly going to keep hold of things. And of course, my wife is still a subscriber to cable. So that said, I think I still have lots of access to WWE Wrestling. So I won't be giving up WWE Wrestling, so to speak, but I have uninstalled the app and canceled subscription. But that said, I'm interested to see how the Money in Banks play out, especially given the 4 different floors. And we saw, as far as at WrestleMania, kind of a peek in that, the work that WWE can do in terms of the filming, in terms of the pre-recorded segments. And overall, I thought it was pretty good. There were certainly some things I would tweak here and there, as we mentioned in our previous podcast. But generally speaking, looking at the sort of big picture of this, I think WWE is on the right track of this. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But looking at the title matches, so it looks like we'll have Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt, which I think Braun Strowman's going to beat Bray Wyatt because they're advertising it as Bray Wyatt, not The Fiend. So I think we're going to see Braun Strowman really just kind of bulldoze Bray Wyatt. But then I think we'll have a rematch where it's Braun Strowman versus The Fiend. And I would anticipate at that point we'll probably see The Fiend recapture the Universal Championship. It looks like we're also going to have, in terms over on Raw, we're going to have the WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins. Seems kind of weird, given Seth Rollins kind of lost in one of the biggest matches of his life a couple weeks ago at WrestleMania to Kevin Owens. My assumption is Kevin Owens, who you would think would be the number one contender for the Universal Championship. My assumption is either 2 things. One, probably playing a card like Roman Reigns, where he wants to stay home and do what's best for his family. Given everything that's going on right now with the pandemic, you certainly can't blame someone like Kevin Owens, and certainly Roman Reigns, who's looking not only out for his own family but also for his own health. health, given his compromised immune system. So that could be what Kevin Owens is. We do know Kevin Owens is a family man, so he might just be he's taking a back seat right now while all this sort of stuff clears out. It could also be Kevin Owens is injured. That spot at WrestleMania. I mean, I thought he broke his back at first. I mean, really, it almost looked like he missed it, but he hit it head on. And I tell you, Kevin Owens, this wasn't his first rodeo, won't be his last. He's been in the game since he was 16. He got started when he's 16 years of age. And of course, we know pro wrestling, while it's predetermined, it is a sport. All right, let's make no bones about it. It is predetermined, but it is an actual sport. And while the idea and the intention is not to get injured, it does happen, especially in this type of sports entertainment, what have you. But that's, again, it's sort of par for the course. So it could be one of those two situations. Suffice to say, we're going to have Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins. I think this will be another way to beef up Drew McIntyre in terms of the Monday Night Messiah. Although, here it is. We've got Seth Rollins and the Monday Night Messiah thing going on. And really, he's not getting his message across. At some point, if they're going to treat this like an actual threat, because so far it's been sort of like, well, they've had this group of 4 guys that are pretty talented, and they can kind of hold the yard against the locker room, so to speak. But what we've noticed is usually the locker room tends to fight back, and they sort of always have the last laugh. Well, if you're going to keep going on with this, and this is a good opportunity because you got Seth Rollins, who's going to put over Murphy, who's going to put over AOP, and these are guys that need to be put over for the future. You got to extend this. So at some point, you've really got to legitimize the Monday Night Messiah and really start building Monday Night Raw around Seth Rollins. But you got Drew McIntyre with the title. So my assumption is we'll at least have his championship for a good 3 to 6 months, given WWE terms. But who knows? Seth Rollins obviously is in the business of putting people over. And I think that's why he's the number one contender. He's good at putting people over, and he is a company man. He's always defended WWE, always defended Vince, always defended everything. He's basically Vince's mouthpiece, so to speak, for the masses, as it were, on social media. But that said, I would assume Drew McIntyre would definitely retain the first go around. But ultimately, I'm looking at seeing, as far as the whole Monday Night Messiah thing, if they're going to actually take that to the next level, they've got to legitimize that. The tag belts was nice, but we really need to get that as far as the main title, the WWE Championship within the House of the Messiah, and that'll really legitimize them. But other than that, it'll be interesting to see with the Money in Bank matches what they do. Again, I think that Braun Strowman is going to go over Bray Wyatt, but I think in the rematch we'll see The Fiend go over Braun Strowman, and look to see Drew McIntyre retain the title at Money in the Bank.
Yeah, Josh, man, I'm with you. McIntyre probably going to retain against Rollins, but you're right. At some point, they need to kind of establish Rollins, or reestablish, I'd say, because I feel like Rollins started coming on strong with AOP. They were starting to be that, what they called, always that dominant force in the WWE, right? They started off strong. But then they just, I feel like everything just kind of fizzled, and, he got kind of, you don't really take him as seriously as you used to. So, they do need to do something to reestablish Rollins as a real threat. I feel like McIntyre can still retain the belt, but Rollins can really, depending on how you book it, how you do the match, Rollins can still really come across as a real threat, really put McIntyre through his paces. Give us another knockdown, drag-out fight, You could still lose and still be strong, in a way, Rollins. As for, the Universal Championship, it is regular Bray Wyatt, vanilla Bray Wyatt, let's say, show host Bray Wyatt, as opposed to The Fiend. So, I can easily see Strowman plowing through him, unless they pull one of the deals where, like he did with against Rollins, where it seemed like the alternate personality was starting to kind of pop up a little bit, kind of exert its force, and start to fight back. Maybe not. I don't know. They might just be doing this as a match just to make Strowman look good, or further the character work of Bray Wyatt / The Fiend. Who knows? But I imagine that Strowman's gonna plow through, probably, more than likely. But next up, let's take a look at some of these released WWE superstars. As listening to the last episode, and I'm sure you've heard it in the news, like a whole ton of WWE superstars, and actually not just WWE superstars, but a lot of people from behind the scenes have been let go. It was just a massacre, an absolute massacre of WWE's cost-cutting measures just to squeeze a few more nickels out of their bottom line. Some of these people, especially super WWE superstars, probably maybe wanted to leave, some of them, but for the most part, these folks did not know this, and they got notified by text message. It's pretty lame, pretty crummy WWE. Really shady, really bad work. Let's take a look at some of the bigger releases that I saw from the list. Rusev, I think, is probably the top of the list right there in terms of someone that AEW should be doing their very best to get. Like, I think the mantra over at AEW should be get Rusev, get Rusev, get Rusev. every day is Rusev Day at AEW as far as I'm concerned. Like, really, he was so underutilized, and he has so much to share. I feel like we only caught just the slightest hint of Rusev's potential in WWE. He was squandered, utterly squandered. Everything I've seen about AEW tells me that if Rusev went over there, he could absolutely be great. Absolutely be great in AEW. He can really spread his wings and really do what he wants to do in AEW and make some great wrestling. Kurt Angle, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the scenes, you're going to want Kurt Angle around. I mean, if it's not his knowledge, it's just his character, his everything. You know, like all you got to do is have Kurt Angle, maybe some kind of music that's similar to Kurt Angle's thing, something Kurt Angle-ish starts playing and you see him pop out or something. That's all you need. That's all you need. Everybody's going to go nuts. It's a slam dunk. Zack Ryder is someone who, again, I feel was squandered. I think he has a lot of potential. He's got a lot of internet pop, I guess you could say. And I think that AEW is a little hipper. I think AEW could probably utilize him a lot better than WWE did. Resurrect Long Island IZ. Bring in something about the fact that he's like an action figure maniac. You know what I mean? These are things that AEW is not afraid to go into and to talk about because they understand their fan base, you know? Eric Rowan, I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, the man can move. He's got the look. He's got the moves. He's just a great big man. Maybe he could join up with the Dark Order. You know, reunite with Brody Lee. That'd be fun. Who knows? But yeah, somebody get him. I mean, basically, I'm going to say that I want AEW to scoop up everybody. How awesome would that be? Because I'm going through this list and like if you team up all these people, that'd be an incredible stable right there. But who knows what these guys want to do? Gallows and Anderson. I could easily see these guys just going back to New Japan when things open back up and just being like, fuck this. You know, I'm done with this. Drake Maverick. I watched Drake Maverick's goodbye video and let me tell you this. Not a dry eye in the house. It really illustrates just how caught off guard and how shocked and how disrupting this is for people's lives, what WWE is doing. Any of these guys, it's really terrible what happened in WWE, but I have confidence that most of these folks are going to land on their feet. Yeah, the thing about the wrestling industry is you'll pop back up somewhere. You know, if you leave WWE, you can pop up on AEW or ROH or New Japan or AWA or anywhere. I would tell any of these folks to just hang in there. They know what they're doing. They'll get back on their feet. What do you think about all this, Josh?
Okay, so what's next for the furloughed, released WWE wrestlers and producers? You know, hopefully good things. And that's first and foremost, really my hats go off to those folks and anyone that's really experiencing hard times during this pandemic. Not everyone's fortunate enough to have a remote job where they can work from home. And so my heart really goes out to anyone, any subscriber listening, any family member, any friend, anyone out there that happens to come across this. I'm wishing for the best. I wouldn't wish this type of luck or unfortunate events on my worst enemy, but here we are. And so in terms of, looking at WWE and as far as the furloughed release wrestlers, my assumption is the producers will probably hang out and get their jobs back. They're furloughed, so the idea is that once they start doing the live events again, they should be brought back. Now, it does kind of call into question if you're a producer and AEW might pick you up, or another, as far as a wrestling federation may pick you up during this time. It's kind of a gamble. It's one of those where I think WWE released you, but also wants you back. So it's kind of one of those where they didn't want to pay you for 2 months and then maybe have you come back. Doesn't seem fair, but it's WWE we're talking about. If that's the case, that is obviously horrible. That said, there are some that were just flat out released. Look at Kurt Angle, producer, was flat out released. Now, Kurt Angle, and I'm sure like a lot of these producers and most wrestlers nowadays know, you got to save your money. You got to save your money. And this is something that you and I can also, as far as people that aren't wrestlers, whether you're working at 7-Eleven or you're as far as, working for a Fortune 500 company, trying to save a little bit of money every paycheck is definitely the way to go. You never know. You always got to have a backup plan. You never know when there's going to be, and no pun intended here, but you never know when you're going to have something like a pandemic happen and you need to fall back on that. And especially when you start getting older and you have a family, you start thinking about those things, in case you slip on a banana peel or, in case the world slips on a banana peel, you got to be ready. So my assumption is that a lot of wrestlers certainly nowadays have learned from yesteryear that you want to save some of your money because you never know when you might get injured, because you don't necessarily get paid if you're injured. You might lose some on merchandise and another channel, so to speak. So it's one of those things you always got to prepare yourself. So in general, we should always be trying to save. So my assumption is that they've saved some money and they'll be okay for right now. Also, some of them are probably looking at it as a chance to take a break and spend some time with their family during these troubled times during the pandemic. So So it might be kind of a win-win situation where, hey, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to hang out with my family, kind of wait for this thing to blow over, and then I'll get my job back with WWE. My assumption is WWE, those that furloughed them, would hire them back. Now, Kurt Angle was released. Kurt Angle was not furloughed. He was released, which is interesting because as a Hall of Famer, you automatically get $25,000 a year. So, and again, Kurt Angle, I'm sure, has saved well beyond his means, and we'll probably be okay. But the thing about it is, when you're released, kind of when you're furloughed, the idea is that you're probably going to be brought back. When you're released, the idea is that you're released, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors. It'll be interesting to see if Kurt Angle just sort of hangs out, or if he picks up an offer from say somewhere like AEW. That's the other thing with AEW is that there's going to be that propensity to want to sign a lot of these guys really quickly, and to that I would say two reasons not to do that. And I think the first is creative control. You want to really control as far as everyone that's coming through. And it's not like WCW where you want to throw everything on the wall and see what sticks. With AEW, you have a nice formula. Now build on that. Don't just glob things in there. Build strategically on top of what you already have and find a way to integrate these new wrestlers. Maybe you want to have a mass genesis of sorts like the Radicals, where you had Benoit and Malenko and Guerrero and Saturn sort of come over. But again, it's one of those where, are you ready for it? One, are you ready? Are you able to handle that creatively, where you have a 2 hour show and you're suddenly having these new guys just kind of come in the locker room and sort of make their way, where there's a lot of other hungry wrestlers that have been fighting for a spot in AEW. So that is something to contend with. The other thing is money. Eric Bischoff mentioned once that he predicted each AEW show cost about $400,000 to do. Well, if you think about it, $400,000, and you think about ticket sales, and you think about as far as paying overhead and all that, you're not necessarily breaking even quite yet. And so they're really going to rely on as far as their action figures, the merchandise, they're going to rely on the eventual video game, those types, the pay-per-views, which is another thing, you should definitely think about, supporting them with, certainly during these times. And any other independent show, go to the Fight app, you'll see tons of indie wrestling shows. Really, if you're like me, I decided to uninstall the WWE Network, and I'm spending that $10 on other shows. So something to consider. Again, not telling you, just kind of recommending. But that goes to say, going back to the point with AEW, I don't know. I don't know if they actually have the money to hire all these guys. Now, you think they would give them a reasonable offer, right? Well, AEW is in the position to lowball them. And I know Josh will have his rhetoric on this and say, hey, screw business, screw that. And I agree with Josh. Here's the thing, though. If you put your business hat on, your job is to get the best talent for the lowest amount of money possible. That's your job as a business. I'm not saying that's right. That's just the way it is. So yeah, to Josh's point, and even to my point too, I would hope they get decent offers, but they were just released by WWE. And AEW knows that, of course. I would think they would use that to their advantage in as far as negotiations. So I don't know. I think really what we want to see is eventually them to keep going. Maybe it's not just AEW. Maybe it's NWA. Maybe it's Impact. Or even Ring of Honor. There's tons of other federations that are out there. It would be kind of nice to see sort of, those that were released from WWE to be sort of sprinkled throughout the federation, really see them blossom. So sort of see them at different federations, whether it's, Impact or Ring of Honor, and sort of see them as far as prosper there. We saw that with Drew McIntyre initially when he kind of fizzled out in WWE, that went to, at the time, TNA and went over as Drew Galloway and came back and went through first, NXT and all that. And here we are. He main evented and won WrestleMania. So it'd be kind of cool to see some of these guys that were released sort of recharged and sort of really do what they wanted to, whether it's the indie scene or whether it's a competitor like AEW or what have you. But my hope is that they will figure something out. And if nothing else, they can chill out with their family. But save your money. You never know when this is going to happen to us. It's always a good rule of thumb to save your money. And again, my heart goes out to anyone affected and impacted right now by the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I pretty much agree with everything you said, Josh, man. Usually I do rally against big business, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just smart. I mean, you can't not do that at some point, So I totally agree with that, even if I take a generally anti-business stance. I mean, this is just the nature of the beast sometimes. There's certain things you just have to accept. Yeah, I can't add too much more to that. So let's move on to looks like WWE is no longer mentioning Roman Reigns on broadcast. According to Dave Meltzer, he's heard that there was a memo going around to explicitly stating to not mention Roman Reigns on television. I mean, folks can read into this a lot of different ways. I mean, I really, my thing is just, I just think it's because they don't know when he's going to be back. And is it going to be soon? Is it going to be later? You don't want to start mentioning him if he's still months and months and months away, who knows? I mean, part of it's this pandemic, obviously. He's keeping himself safe because his immune system is weakened because of his leukemia situation. And that's totally understandable, totally fair if you ask me. He's doing the right thing. They just don't know when he's going to come back. I think that's all there really is to that. Now, could they have written him off in some way that left the door open? I mean, they didn't make any mention of why he was suddenly removed from the Goldberg match and replaced with Braun Strowman at all. There was nothing in the storyline. So, I mean, you could argue that that's a little crummy. That I just chalked that up to just WWE being lazy and not caring or something like that. I don't think there's too much behind it, but let's hear what Josh has to say about the subject.
There's been some speculation about no mention of Roman Reigns during the SmackDown broadcast or even Raw or any WWE programming. I really think it's just because at this point and I mentioned this before with Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns has a compromised immune system, so he's definitely taking care of himself, but also during these times wants to take care of his family. So I think that he is doing just that. And I think WWE, they're doing the smart thing, and rather than explain that, hey, Roman Reigns just gave up his WWE championship, maybe it's a bit more admirable to have just Braun Strowman sort of step in, gloss over it, move on. And of course, once everything blows over, I'm sure we'll have Roman Reigns back. So I don't think Roman Reigns is leaving or anything like that. He's definitely back. I don't think we're going to see Roman Reigns in an AEW ring with Kurt Angle anytime soon. That said, I still think that it's not like they've changed the opening to Friday Night SmackDown. Now, if you've noticed, generally speaking, when you see as far as the opener to Raw or NXT or SmackDown, the final superstar, the final shot of whatever superstar is in that final shot of the opener is typically the person they're building as far as that show around. They want that person to be the final thought before they actually go into the actual show. That's the last image you saw. And Roman Reigns kind of the last person you sort of see in the Fox opener, the SmackDown on Fox opener. So they haven't removed him. They haven't removed any mention of him on WWE.com. So I think he's okay in that sense. I think he's just taking some time out with his family. Although what's interesting while we're talking about it, the opener to SmackDown, I don't know if anyone's noticed this, at the very end, Roman Reigns does a Superman punch, punches in the ground. They have a bunch of fans on the ground that are cheering, yay, 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 yay. But when Roman Reigns, now again, Roman Reigns is like 400 feet. This is for the opener. When he pounds the ground, it explodes. So in a way, he just killed a bunch of fans. I don't know if anyone has noticed that. So hit us up, Hotbox, joshtalkwrestling@gmail.com. That could be its own episode. But yeah, definitely I think we'll see Roman Reigns here soon. I think he's just kicking it right now. I think that they're just, as far as WWE, they're just doing their thing, kind of moving. They want to put Braun Strowman over, really focus on Braun Strowman and sort of keep Roman Reigns out of the limelight, as we don't know when he'll be back, but he will be back.
Scandalous things surrounding Roman Reigns' Superman punch to the ground. I remember the first problem was that we found out that he has a pad on the entrance ramp when he does his entrance and he pounds the ground. There's a tiny little pad they have there that he hits his hand on so he doesn't hurt his hand. Now, when he's 100 feet tall, he's killing people. When will the terror of Roman Reigns end? I did not notice that, Josh. I find that very funny, actually. So I'm going to look out for that next time I watch SmackDown. And also to keep in mind, I just remembered, Roman's wife is, pregnant with twins. So, he could be just, like Josh said, he's just enjoying like family right now too, quarantined, staying safe, enjoying family. Why not? Now let's take a look at some interesting news. Apparently there's a little bit of talk going around about the WWE Network not quite living up to expectations, according to, that's the rumor going on. What do you think about that, Josh?
There's this current thought of WWE, as far as the WWE Network has been failing, or it's not as far as acquiring more new subscribers. And I think that is true, from what I understand from the most recent, as far as quarterly report, that they have increased some subscribers, but not as many as expected and as many as a year ago. Overall, I think what it is with the network is that it's $9.99 a month. However, the pay-per-views, a lot of them are garbage. Really, with the pay-per-views, they're really Sunday Night Raws. They're slightly more organized television shows. There's a lot of DQs, a lot of countouts in the main events. And you're seeing that a lot with the main shows. We saw one with SummerSlam. We actually saw one officially at WrestleMania. We saw the DQ with Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. I almost cried when I saw it. Like, no. But of course, they restarted that match, thank goodness. So, but I believe that is the first disqualification in WrestleMania history. You have to look that up. But I guess the question we should ask is it actually worth it? Is there value? I don't know. I don't think so. With $9.99, yes, you get a bunch of pay-per-views, but when it's all garbage, and I should say this, that I really appreciate the work of the wrestlers. Like, the matches are good, they're solid, but oftentimes I know the finishes are produced not necessarily by them, and more by creative, or more by, as far as WWE corporate and Vince and so on and so forth. So I get that. So I understand there's a lot of sort of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. So I know it's not just directly their fault, but generally speaking, as a product, the wrestling itself, well, let's just be honest. I mean, it's good, but when you have these kind of finishes, it's like you really just want to see the 4 big pay-per-views and not necessarily the pay-per-views in the middle. That's part of it. The other part of it is that you think about, you can see ECW, you can see WWE, you can see WCW, all the old pay-per-views. Well, there's a lot of those pay-per-views you probably don't even want to watch, just to be honest. And even then, there's probably those pay-per-views that you do want to watch, you probably could find on YouTube. Not saying it's necessarily right, but this is just the way of the world. You could probably just go to YouTube and find those for free anyway. I think the other thing too is that for me, the shows, I think there have been some good shows, but what I want to see is more of like a Legends House. Kind of see that sort of reality TV. I think they do some good things with Chronicle. Their series of Chronicle, I wish they'd beef that up. I mean, some of the cinematography they do with Chronicle, with W Chronicles, is excellent. So I think maybe lumping those more, and they have kind of the day of, 24 hours Chronicle, sort of lump those into one episode, one actual, as far as I guess offering, and really kind of go all in and have a great story put together for those wrestlers. Those are always pretty good in general, but some of the ride-alongs I enjoy, but I kind of get tired of it after a while. I don't know. I think that's where I feel like they've come up with some good ideas. You think about the Warehouse show is interesting, but it feels like in some cases, I feel like the network is running out of steam. Me personally as a user, I felt like it's running out of steam. They're still, as far as adding more content and whatnot, but as far as the excitement of it, it's just not there anymore. And I think part of it might be if they actually had Monday Night Raw, if they actually had it SmackDown live on the network, that might make it a little more fun and a little more cost effective. And for those of us that are tethered to cable, would be less inclined to do so. Now, I get it. I'm sure WWE, they make a bunch of money being on Fox. They make a bunch of money being on USA. And to step back, they make a ton of money being on Fox. I mean, WWE being on Fox is a brilliant move. It's non-cable. The amount of subscribers or fans they get from that channel alone, it's got to be astronomical. So I understand why they do it, but to me, again, I'm just speaking as a personal user. I do like some things about the network. I just feel like at times it's running out of steam, and I want to see more. This is a network, right? Like, you go to Bravo Network, you see probably, 20 groundbreaking reality shows they have. On WWE, I just kind of sit and think about, okay, which ones they actually have. They have The Bump, they have, and again, these aren't necessarily award-winning. I shouldn't even say the ones on Bravo are award-winning, but in terms of notoriety, in terms of being excellent reality TV, I don't know that I necessarily get that on the network. It certainly wasn't one of my reasons for uninstalling the app, or as far as the network. Again, I mentioned that was because of certain political things, certain decisions that WWE is making as an organization. But I would just like to see more of that. I think that if they went all in on and sort of taking what they did with Chronicle, what they did with 24, what they did with as far as the 365, all those different shows they did as far as the day of, all those shows, they sort of lump it into one and make it an actual series, because it's too saturated the other way. There's too many different shows going on, and I said Chronicle earlier. People are probably like, what's Chronicle? And it's like, well, some are like, what's The Bump? So I think it's really kind of merging all those as far as shows together, making it more of a clean catalog. But again, with the pay-per-views, I think if you actually make them more groundbreaking, like at this point, I feel like a majority of the pay-per-views I watch, I could have skipped. I would have honestly saved 4 hours. That's no smack against as far as the workers. I just think some of the finishes and some of the general revolution of the storylines don't really pan out at a pay-per-view. To me, it just becomes another Sunday night show. So I think if they could actually make as far as the pay-per-view, a destination. I remember back in the day when you watched a pay-per-view, that was the night. Now, I know things nowadays like on demand and you can, as far as things are pre-recorded and DVR, yada, yada. But generally speaking, even then, when you watch, say, like something like Walking Dead, or you watch something like Ozark, or you watch some award-winning show that you like, or something the masses love, when you're watching those shows, even though it's pre-recorded, it's still live to you. It's still live to you, and it's like your first time kind of watching it. You're still excited about it. It's still something you really look forward to. I don't necessarily get that way with the pay-per-views anymore, but I think, again, it's if you focus more on the actual stories, having some more finality in the pay-per-views. I know that it seems like we get some finality in some pay-per-views like WrestleMania and SummerSlam, but other cases I feel like we have the same match for like 3 pay-per-views, and what they've done is just, the first match is one-on-one. Okay, then the next match will throw in some chairs, and the next match will throw in a steel cage. But to me, it's too formulaic. And I think if we fix the pay-per-views, that's going to make it more of a destination. But statistically speaking, it does seem like there is somewhat of a decline with the network. But it could be people like myself that have just sort of at some point realize they don't like supporting the organization as WWE. They feel bad that they can't support the workers, but they also know that as far as like just supporting WWE and the decisions they continuously make, when you think about Crown Jewel, you think about as far as their work with the Florida government recently, it's not something to exactly be excited about. And that's not something I know I was excited about. So while I will support WWE and certain other, as far as channels, as far as like USA and Fox, I do have cable, so I will be watching their shows. In terms of the network itself, where I know that's got to be 100% WWE revenue, I've decided to uninstall that. But I don't know. It's a good question. I'm interested to see what Josh has to say about that, because it is something that I think overall statistically we're seeing the decline. I know as far as I've had a few friends that had it no longer have it. That's always kind of interesting to sort of point out in your own circles, like who still has it. So overall, I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think the network's going to fall. It's pretty thorough. They have a lot of great things going on for it. And I'm sort of nitpicking with all the reality TV. I just wish there was a bit more. And Legends House was one of my favorite ones. I thought that was a perfect series they could continue to do. Think of all the great stories that might pop up. So to continue doing like Legends House, that'd sort of be a dead giveaway. That would actually be one of those things, maybe in addition to WrestleMania, to get me to rejoin the subscription.
Yeah, Josh, man, a lot of good points you made right there. A lot of points, a lot of things I agree with. I mean, I know you've let your network subscription run out. I've still got mine, partly because I'm still working through my back catalog of pay-per-views. Like I talked about in the last episode, I'm working my way through every single WCW, ECW, and WWE pay-per-view ever made, or at least that's on the network. So I'm keeping that around for now. But yeah, a lot of these pay-per-views, just walk going through them, they're not necessarily worth rewatching. It depends how hardcore of a fan you are and what kind of wrestling you like and what era. So I always feel like there is value there in just a museum aspect for the WWE Network, just because it has all these defunct wrestling federations that you can still watch the content and access it in a reasonably easy way. So I think there's always value there for the right kind of fan. But the thing is, I do believe that the numbers are declining for new subscribers. I feel like what happened was in the 6 years that the network's been around, they debuted in I think it was like February 2014. So it's been a little over 6 years now. I feel like they just kind of reached terminal velocity in terms of new signups. Mostly everybody who was going to sign up and stay a member for a reasonable amount of time kind of did. And then I feel like now all that's going to happen is you're going to get a paltry amount of subscribers here and there, a little bit here and there. But now you're just going to start seeing people who are dropping off for reasons of quality, reasons of cost, reasons of the behind the scenes bullshit that WWE's pulling. Like Josh got fed up with it, and I totally understand that. So I feel like this was just inevitable. I mean, this is still a niche thing. Wrestling is global. It's a global product. WWE's got their hooks in just about every country under the sun. But still, at the end of the day, it's still a niche thing. It's not like Hulu or Netflix, where it caters to everybody. Like, here's the thing. Not everyone likes wrestling, but I'd be stretched to find someone who straight up says, I don't like movies in general. Just movies. Video entertainment in general. Netflix is able to cater to everything under the sun for movies. The WWE Network is simply wrestling, and that's great, but the appeal is less. I feel like it just kind of reached that saturation point to a degree. Now, things to keep in mind that support our theory are WWE no longer shares subscriber numbers. They used to tout everything. We got this many subscribers now, this many subscribers, this and this and that, and now they don't really talk about that anymore. So that's kind of a little bit of a flag there. Also, there was a rumor that the departure of George Barrios and Michelle Wilson who were big proponents of the WWE Network, there was a rumor there that they were fired because, as some kind of sign that the WWE Network is failing. Apparently, reports are now showing that that's not really the case. It was simply a complete disagreement on the vision of the company moving forward, which I guess you could say does involve the network, but apparently it wasn't the network specifically that got them canned. But still, with that, even then, it's still clear to see that the network is not doing as well as I think everybody had hoped. I think their hopes were a little too high. I think they were maybe just a little bit unreasonable. Other reasons why it's failing, not enough, like Josh said, there's not quite enough new content that's worthwhile. I feel like they're constantly pumping out what I call talking head content, where it's just interviews or stories or three wrestlers or legends getting together and talking. And there's not quite enough content that's more just entertainment based. Like, I really enjoyed Camp WWE. I really liked Slam City. I really like Legends House. Things that, involve wrestling, they're from the world of wrestling, but it's not just, Mick Foley telling a story, Mick Foley talking to, Scott Hall or something. I mean, that stuff's great, but like Josh said, there's WWE 24, there's Chronicle, there's The Bump, there's Table for Three, there's Ride Along. I was eating that stuff up at first, and then it just got more and more and more of that same kind of stuff, and you get a little fried. Sometimes you want to watch something that's completely fictional, like, Slam City's a silly kid show, but it's funny. It's funny. It's something different. They removed, I think they removed Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, which again, yeah, silly kid show, but it's just something different. These are just examples of something different. Like, I think it'd be really cool if they had the WWE Studios movies on the network. I mean, it's under the WWE flag. I think that would add some more bang for your buck. You know what I mean? There are ways to add some more value, but WWE's just not really doing it. The other thing, of course, is the live TV. They just don't have it. It's much more profitable for them to get the TV deals. And I get that. But because of that, the WWE Network's appeal is a little bit limited. There's a lot of people who just are interested in the current week-to-week product, but they don't really get that on the network. It takes 30 days before Raw or SmackDown comes to the archive. So you don't get that. You still have to use Hulu. Like me, I have to use Hulu to watch Raw and SmackDown because I don't have regular cable. But it would be really nice if I could just pay that $10 and get everything live in one place. But, they're not going to do that. Pay-per-views, yeah. Half the pay-per-views they have on Backspace, whatever the hell you want to call it, pay-per-views like that, who cares? Yeah, it feels like a Sunday Night Raw, Yeah, that's not really adding value. If you don't remember what the hell happened like 3 days later because it was so inconsequential, that's not good. Like you said, Josh, man, the decline of the network was caused by a lot of different things. Just laziness, lack of new content, TV deals, pay-per-views that don't go anywhere, over-reliance on certain content that people just aren't really that interested in. It's a lot of things. I feel like there is an opportunity there because there is so much content and there is an interest. But I feel like, is WWE going to really take advantage of it? I don't know. Maybe not so much. Maybe they're not trying so hard anymore. I don't know. I wish they would. But if this keeps up, yeah, I'll be nixing my subscription basically as soon as I finish these old pay-per-views. And then I'll just, I'll probably call it quits after that. I mean, if WWE can do something to win me back, after I do eventually cancel it, then yeah, fine, good. But for now, yeah, I might be joining Josh on this. And just until then, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to hit that like button. Tell your dog to subscribe. Tell your mailman to subscribe. Trick Grandma into subscribing, telling her it's something about her medication. Also, be sure to wash your hands. Be safe. Stay socially distant from each other. And have a good one.